Holy SHTF. Oh man, if they go through with this, we don't have much time left. Holy SHTF, guys. This is massive. You remember a few months ago when there was all this talk about how, well, if we implement a no-fly zone over Ukraine, NATO that is, likely from Poland, likely using Patriot missile defense systems, the same ones that they're going to be sending, apparently, that it would lead to World War III. Why? Because NATO would be forced to shoot down Russian planes, and Russian planes would have nothing to do but respond, or Russian missiles, I should say. And that would lead to an escalatory ladder of events that, of course, ended ultimately at nuclear confrontation. Well, guess what? We got a no-fly zone in Ukraine. Even better, we got a no-fly zone in Ukraine. Not just from Poland, but actually in Ukraine, being commandeered by what likely will be some American troops in a mercenary form, in an inspector, in a training form, in some way, shape, or form. I cannot believe how close we are encroaching towards World War III. Do people realize how huge of a move this is? The Russians are not stupid. They see the hand being played here. They see that NATO is getting their no-fly zone without having to call it a no-fly zone and without having to immediately invoke Article 5. But the Russians will have to respond in some way, shape, or form above and beyond just increasing the intensity of the conflict in Ukraine. They will have to, because this is major. This means they're going to start shooting down bombers, if they're as capable as they say they are. I guess we'll see. They're going to start shooting down bombers. They're going to start shooting down more fighter jets. And it's going to make the current operations conducted by the Russians very, very difficult, because now they're going to be facing effectively the best defensive systems that NATO has to offer. This is the best NATO has. Some people say it's not as good as the S-400, S-500. Indeed, when you look at the specs, it isn't, but it's still the best that NATO has. And this could be a potential game changer for the conflict in some ways. So this is major. This is huge. This should not be understated, because months ago, Biden said this would lead to World War III. Now, the only people left to sign off on this, and it's looking very likely, all of a sudden, they were talking about sending them to Poland. Poland didn't want them because the thing with Germany, and now they're sending it directly to Ukraine. I was absolutely blown away that they made this decision. The only people yet to sign off are Lloyd Austin and the man himself, Joe Biden, the same one who said that this would likely lead us to nuclear war. It's really a genius way of getting out of the obligations of a no-fly zone and the whole Article 5 entanglement that would ensue from shooting down a Russian plane. The question is, are the Russians going to tolerate this? Because this is on the heels of Ukrainian drones targeting the Russian nuclear triad, likely with guidance systems and information and intel that's been informed with NATO communication systems. Okay, with NATO intelligence gathering systems, satellites, the whole 9 yards. And they're sending them Patriot missile defense systems. Meanwhile, Putin has gone AWOL. Where's Vladimir Putin? Well, he was supposed to attend an annual conference that he has attended religiously for the past 10 years. Suddenly, he's absent. On the same day, the Pope is screaming about the end of the world. Okay, and on the same day, you have the Belarusians doing some very, very suspicious troop maneuvers right now. Something big is fitting to go down. So, on the topic of this no-fly zone, this Patriot missile defense system is widely considered to be one of the most capable long-range weapon systems to defend airspace against incoming ballistic and cruise missiles, as well as some aircraft. Because of the long-range capability and high-altitude capability, it can potentially shoot down Russian missiles and aircraft far from their intended targets inside Ukraine. What this also tells me is that they're less worried about the Russians capturing these systems, because that's always a concern, is that the Russians are going to capture the systems. Maybe they're not worried about that because they know that the Russian technology is superior. So, you know, it would be silly for, you know, the Russians to try to reverse engineer something which isn't as good as what they have, although I'm sure there's some components of the system that are superior. Anyways, that is not looking good. It's not receiving the media attention it deserves. It's huge. It's being kind of spun a little bit. It's being understated. And it's a lot bigger deal than most people realize to send these systems directly in there. Because at that point, I mean, let's be honest, you're literally fighting NATO at that point. Because it takes, you're fighting NATO's best missile defense. You're not fighting their best offensive systems just yet, because of course the Ukrainians haven't been given the long-range missile systems, but that's right around the corner. Okay, so something big is brewing. Pope Francis has issued a dire warning for humanity. He sees greater omens of destruction in the world. He has said that it's a difficult time for humanity, a bitter period full of roar of war, growing injustices, famines, poverty, and suffering. But he said, in spite of the fact that things are bad, that his vision for the future appears with even greater omens of greater destruction and desolation. How the war is going in Ukraine has become so grave, devastating, and threatening that it sparks great worry, Francis said at the time. In fact, this terrible, inconceivable wound of humanity, instead of shrinking, continues to bleed even more, threatening to spread. Now, you guys know I'm not religious on this channel. I know a lot of people who follow me are, and I'm totally hip to that. When I say I'm not religious, I say I'm agnostic. I'm not going to get into all the nuances of what that really means for me. Anyways, but I could care less what you do. I could care less what you believe in, to a certain extent, of course. I mean, obviously, if you believe that killing me is a good thing, then I probably am going to take issue with that. So there are some, you know, there's definitely an optimal range there. But the Pope is a fairly significant person. And for him to be coming out and giving such a dire warning like that, knowing what the implications are going to be for people who follow his line of faith, and especially the ones who are into the Christian eschatology, end times type stuff, that is going to push a lot of people over the edge. I'm not saying it's the end times. As you guys know, I think that nuclear war is, contrary to popular belief, quite survivable based on the guests that I've brought on the channel. But this is absolutely insane. And you need to remember that the people in charge, they have an escape pod. They have a way out. You don't. I don't. Now, not surprisingly, there was this documentary released by the National Film Board of Canada just the other day, just a few weeks ago, and it's already racked up like 600,000 views. Half of those views probably came from me talking about it on this channel and referring people there. But all of these things coinciding at the same time, it's just very, very suspicious. Where is Vladimir Putin? Of course, the mainstream media is saying, oh, he's sick, he's got cancer, Parkinson, blah, blah, bullshit. They're going to seize on any opportunity to fan a story that is suggesting that Putin is weak or incompetent or Putin is on his way out, okay? And that is all just to bolster and garner more support for the war. I don't think that's the case. I think that it's a national security risk, which is why he wasn't present. And I think that that doesn't bode well for the future course of this conflict. We also have, right now, U.S. Navy Ohio-class ballistic missile submarines, as well as the Royal Navy Vanguard-class nuclear submarine, both armed with Trident nuclear missiles, in a rare photo shoot in the Atlantic, doing exercises with one another. Tell me that isn't a flex on the Russians. Okay, right now, the Russians are actually, I just read a story just 5 minutes ago that the Russians are moving some of their Arctic missile defense systems into the fight near the border, either near the border of Ukraine and Russia or in Ukraine. Now, why would they be moving the missile defense systems from the Arctic, used obviously primarily for intercepting ICBMs, to that neck of the woods. Something ain't right, my friends. And why this flex by the UK Navy and the United States Navy? This is sending a clear message. Just today, there was a stealth bomber that had a fire and had to be brought down. It didn't crash, but it had to have an emergency landing. This is incredibly suspicious because just a few months ago, we had a fire, a very rare fire. I mean, having a fire on any leg of the nuclear triad is incredibly suspicious. Now we have fires on UK nuclear submarines, one of which I think is now out of commission, and on the brand new stealth bomber. That is very, very concerning in light of the fact that we got fires all over the place, food processing plants, we got attacks on the grid, we got attacks in Russia, malls on fire, military bases being sabotaged. Clearly the war is now being run on a commando behind enemy lines type level. So this is crazy developments, and nobody's talking about this. Nobody's connecting the dots on this Patriot missile thing. People are just like, oh, Patriot missiles in Ukraine, okay. Forgetting that just months ago, Biden himself said that that would lead to nuclear Armageddon. Now we're just one little step away, one little signing by Joe Biden away from that becoming a reality. Absolutely insane. This all on the same day. Okay, I hope you guys are still with me. Holy smokes. On the same day, Royal Marines have admitted to taking part in high-risk covert operations within Ukraine. You remember all that stuff that has happened in Ukraine? The assassination of Russian commanders, the Crimean Bridge, the attacks on Sevastopol, just the assassinations of high-ranking people that Russian has put into place in positions of power. Now the UK has admitted that they have commandos on the ground running these operations. I mean, it's crazy. NATO is at war with Russia. Never mind, are we at war with... I mean, this is stupid. You're going to put Patriot missile defense systems that need to be manned by people who have to be trained by the US Army, and who are likely going to be some of the inspectors there inspecting weapons to make sure that they go to their rightful places. And you have these commandos operating within there. I mean, come on. They're still there. Even SAS operators have been sent to deliver weapons and train Ukrainian servicemen since the war has begun. Speaking of SAS, first books I bought, SAS Urban Survival Handbook. It's a great book. I mean, if you want a comprehensive guide to urban survival, written by a guy, John Lofty Wiseman. I believe he was a special forces in UK. Okay? Yeah, anyways, I believe millions of copies of that have been sold worldwide, so you might as well get one while the getting is good. What else have we talked about, or do we need to talk about? Russia has proposed to the United States to set a ceiling on the number of staff at embassies. This is something that you would see. The curtailing of diplomats and ambassadors from rival nations. That's something we're definitely going to see. Belarus is doing something. They're up to something. Military officials warn traffic in Belarus will be temporarily halted due to movement of hardware and troops. So it's so serious that they have to block traffic. Okay? So something tells me that this is not a drill, and that there's a reason why Putin has gone AWOL, and that there's a reason why they're in the final stages of approving Patriot missiles, and that there's a reason why the Pope is screaming about the end of the world. It's not looking good, folks. I don't know all the nuance of what Belarus is up to potentially. I know that there's a lot of activity on their eastern border, their western border, which would be NATO's eastern flank, one of them, and also movements towards the north, because the Ukrainians, the Belarusians claim, are up to something because they keep destroying roads, they keep mining. If it sounds to me like those are defensive maneuvers. If you're blowing up roads and you're mining the place to high heaven, that sounds to me like you're preparing to defend, not offend. So is this a fixing maneuver by the Belarusians? Are they trying to draw the Ukrainians in so that their forces are diminished in the meat grinder, which is Bakhmut right now in the east, so that the Russians can finish them off there and potentially actually start taking some ground? It's hard to say. Meanwhile, Poland aims to become the largest army in Europe, the largest land army in Europe. Poland. Okay, Poland. They're going to have the most tanks, they're going to have the most air defense, they're going to have the most artillery, and they're probably going to have the most troops. Although they're saying like 2035, they're going to double their participation in the military. They're going to do it a lot quicker than that. In fact, I believe that all of these estimates, think about what they were able to do in World War II in such short periods of time. Germany went to nothing to being one of the world's biggest militaries that the world had ever seen in just a few years. And we're talking about, we can't do this until 2027 and we can only manufacture 45,000 artillery rounds a month. Just wait until the war economy really kicks off. Just wait till the industrial machine really kicks off. You ain't seen nothing yet. As I indicated, Putin has canceled a year-end marathon press conference. This is very, very unusual for Putin, who loves to do very, very long-winded press conferences, one of which was 3 hours and 40 minutes, a record that he set in October. I believe that was right around the time of the annexation. No reason has been provided by his press secretary, Dmitry Peskov, and of course, the MSM is all over it. His health is bad, this and that. Maybe he just didn't get a good sleep last night. It's hard to say. If you ask me, he doesn't look too ill in a lot of the appearances that he has made. Doesn't look that ill at all. I know people talk about how he's grabbing the table and, I don't know. I mean, Parkinson's takes a long time anyways. So even if it was Parkinson, I just seen Michael J. Fox had an acceptance award and he still seemed to be functioning, at least mentally, just fine. So I don't know why they're scoring this Parkinson's as a big win, if that is it. Maybe it's cancer, but I mean, maybe, right? When you're the leader of a country of 150 million people, I'm pretty sure you have the best healthcare possible. So I would not bank on Vladimir Putin dying of cancer, in spite of the fact that Zelensky has said that, well, if Putin dies, then the war is going to end. I doubt it. I doubt it very much, because there are far more hawkish people. You're talking about Ramzan Kadyrov, the leader of the Chechen forces. You're talking about the leader of the Wagner group, the General Surovkin. These guys are far, far more hawkish. If they had their way, they would be lighting that place up. There would be no Patriot missile defense systems moving into that country, because you wouldn't be able to get them into there. There would likely, the only option would be at that point would be a NATO enforced no-fly zone. So, yeah. And then Zelensky also said on Letterman yesterday that he thought Putin was scared of nuclear war. Scared of nuclear war? These guys got bunkers dug so damn deep that you can hit these places with a 10 megaton nuke and ain't nothing gonna happen. Okay, they are dug in for years. That's probably why he's nowhere to be seen right now, because he's pretty close to where he needs to be should things pop off at any minute. So no, the powers that be, the guys who push all the buttons up top, they have a place to retreat to. You and I don't. That is a problem, obviously. I mean, if you were lucky enough to hook up with Ron from Atlas Survival Shelters and you are in a place which is strategic, and you don't have to worry about fallout or enduring a direct hit or enduring the long line of cannibalistic refugees who will be coming your way, then yeah, I guess you're sitting pretty. But the fact is that people in the United States and Canada, for the most part, Back in the day, we had some fallout shelters. I did a video on that. Now, those are all defunct. None of them are operational. At least most of them are. The United States is the same thing. In Switzerland, they have bunkers for everybody. In fact, in many countries around the world, they have bunkers for a very large proportion of their population. Even Moscow right now is getting their bunkers ready. Okay? And Moscow is not only getting their bunkers ready for nuclear attack, they're preparing for an actual high-intensity conventional war with Ukraine. Because at the same time, and this is the insanity of all of this, while the Ukrainians are sending drones, and the Russians have already on record stated that they think NATO was involved in that, now you have this information being leaked today that the UK Special Forces have been operating. So, I mean, come on. Come on, man. We're talking about all of these things that have transpired so far deep behind enemy lines that have the fingerprints of NATO on it, whether it was the Crimean Bridge, whether it was, like I say, all these high-profile assassinations. Guys, I mean, we're just a spitting distance from full-blown SHTF, and I would absolutely recommend that you do everything in your power right now to make sure that you're ready, because it could be go time literally any day, and that's the scary part, is that we analyze this from the news cycle day to day, but a lot of the boxes have already been checked for that you would need to check in order for the Russian nuclear forces to be on the highest state of alert. All of those boxes have already been checked. So it's really just, I mean, any day, just be prepared. I was going to talk about Elon Musk getting booed in San Francisco. I try not to talk about these issues. I was very tempted to come on because people are just eating this stuff up. You see, when economic times get very hard, which they are going to get incredibly challenging in 2023, people are going to be looking for distractions. And one of these things is the culture war nonsense. And of course, Elon Musk goes on stage with Dave Chappelle, of all people. One of the people who is most progressive in their attitudes towards racial injustice, okay? In San Francisco, this guy built these people electric cars. He put his ass on the line going up against the entire petro-industrial complex. He put his ass on the line and he was booed. Well, not entirely. I mean, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I'd say maybe 20% of the crowd booed him, but of course the mainstream media and Don Lemon and all these idiots are like, see, he's getting booed. Why are they booing him? Because of the Twitter leaks? Because he's trying to bring some sanity back into the world? The same guy who's trying to do all this stuff for them. It doesn't matter if you think that lithium and electric cars aren't as green as they pretend to be. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is, it's a thought that counts. And the people on the left who are supposed to be cheering this guy, who doesn't have a $100 million yacht, who isn't taking flights to space like one Jeff Bezos, who, mark my word, Bezos is going to come out, he's going to condemn Elon Musk if he hasn't already, and everybody's going to be like, yay, Jeff, the guy who mistreats his workers, the guy who's totally self-serving and really only has his own personal interests in mind. In contrast to the one guy putting his ass on the line, sleeping on a couch, working 24 hours a day, these virtue-signaling nitwits boo this guy. Absolutely insane. This is why the Pope is saying we're in the end of days. Oh, what else do we got here? So the inflation numbers came in slightly lower. I'm going to run out of time on this video, but it's of no consequence because it's really just because they released the strategic oil reserve. Once that's done, guess what? Prices are going sky high, baby. So enjoy it while it lasts. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.